The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the weathered ranch house, and Nora Finch knew this was the end of her life as she had known it. The final destination in a journey she had not chosen but had been forced to accept when her father's debts became too great, and the only solution was to send her west to marry a stranger. She clutched her small carpetbag to her chest, feeling the rough fabric beneath her fingers as she stared out the dusty window at the sprawling Wyoming landscape. Wheatland was nothing like Philadelphia, where buildings stood tall and proper, where society dictated every movement and word. Here, the land stretched endlessly, raw and unforgiving under the late afternoon sun of August 1882. The air shimmered with heat, and everything looked worn down by wind and time. The driver opened the door, extending a weathered hand to help her down. Nora took it, her legs trembling as her boots hit the hard, packed earth. Dust coated everything, including the man who stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching her arrival with an unreadable expression. This was Samuel Holbrook, her intended husband. The correspondence had been brief, arranged through an agency that specialized in such matches. She knew only that he was 32, owned a cattle ranch, and needed a wife. The photograph she had received showed a stern-faced man with hard eyes, and she had spent the entire journey west preparing herself for cruelty. Her own father had been cruel in his way, cold and distant when he was not angry. The men she had known in Philadelphia regarded women as possessions, pretty things to display and control. She expected nothing different here, perhaps worse, given the harsh nature of this wild country. Samuel stepped down from the porch, and Nora instinctively took a step back, her heart hammering. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his work shirt. His face was tanned from hours in the sun, his dark hair slightly too long, curling at the collar. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, brown and warm, with fine lines at the corners that suggested he smiled more than his photograph had indicated. "Miss Finch," he said, his voice low and gentle. He removed his hat, holding it in his hands. "Welcome to the Silver Creek Ranch. You must be exhausted from your journey." Nora blinked, momentarily thrown by the kindness in his tone. She had expected demands, immediate expectations, perhaps rough handling. Instead, he stood at a respectful distance, his entire demeanor one of careful consideration. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am tired, yes." "Let me take your bag," Samuel said, reaching out slowly, giving her time to refuse. When she did not move, he gently took the carpetbag from her grip. "Your trunk will be brought up shortly. I thought you might like to rest before supper. I have a room prepared for you." A room. Singular. Nora felt her cheeks flush. She knew what marriage meant, what would be expected of her. The wedding was to take place tomorrow, the local minister already notified. But the way Samuel spoke, the gentleness in his manner, confused her. She had armored herself against harshness, but this unexpected kindness left her vulnerable and uncertain. "That would be appreciated," she said, forcing herself to meet his eyes. They were kind eyes, patient. She did not trust it. Samuel gestured toward the house, walking beside her but not touching her, maintaining a space that felt both respectful and somehow lonely. The ranch house was larger than she had expected, built of solid timber with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Through the open door, she could see a comfortable interior, simple but well kept. "I know this is not what you are accustomed to," Samuel said as they climbed the porch steps. "I cannot offer you the refinements of city life, but I hope you will find it comfortable here." Inside, the house was surprisingly clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, with sturdy furniture arranged around it. A large kitchen occupied the back, and a staircase led to the upper floor. Everything spoke of careful maintenance, of a man who took pride in his home. "I do the cooking mostly," Samuel explained, seeming embarrassed. "It is not fancy, but it is filling. I have a few ranch hands who help with the cattle and horses, but they take their meals in the bunkhouse. I thought you might appreciate privacy while you settle in." He led her up the stairs to a spacious bedroom. A large bed with a handmade quilt dominated the space, and a dresser and washstand completed the furnishings. The window looked out over the corral and the vast prairie beyond. "This is my room," Samuel said, setting her bag down carefully. "I will sleep in the spare room until after the wedding. I thought you should have the best room, the most comfortable bed." Nora turned to stare at him, her carefully constructed defenses crumbling further. "You are giving me your room." "It seems only right," Samuel said, a faint flush coloring his neck. "You have given up everything to come here. The least I can do is make sure you are comfortable." "I do not understand," Nora said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "Why are you being kind to me?" Samuel looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Why would I not be?" "Because," Nora said, then stopped, unsure how to articulate the fear and expectation she had carried across half a continent. "Because you do not know me. Because this is a business arrangement. Because I am merely a solution to a problem." Something shifted in Samuel's expression, a shadow of sadness crossing his features. "Is that what you think this is? Is that what they told you?" "Is it not the truth?" Nora asked, wrapping her arms around herself. "You needed a wife. I needed to escape my circumstances. That is the arrangement." Samuel was quiet for a long moment, his hat still clutched in his hands. "I suppose that is one way to look at it," he finally said, "but I was hoping we might make it more than that. I was hoping we might build something good here together." The sincerity in his voice shook something loose inside Nora's chest. She had not expected hope. Hope was dangerous, a luxury she could not afford. "I will let you rest," Samuel said, moving toward the door. "There is water in the pitcher if you would like to wash. Supper will be ready in about an hour. Take your time." After he left, closing the door quietly behind him, Nora sank onto the bed, her legs finally giving out. The quilt was soft beneath her hands, clearly made with care and skill. The room smelled faintly of sage and clean linen. Everything about this place contradicted what she had prepared herself to face. She rose and moved to the window, looking out at the land Samuel called home. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. In the corral, horses moved peacefully, their coats gleaming in the fading light. Beyond, cattle dotted the grassland, small dark shapes against the endless prairie. It was beautiful in a way she had not expected, raw and honest. A knock on the door made her turn. "Come in," she called, expecting Samuel. Instead, a young man entered carrying her trunk. He was perhaps 20, with a friendly face and a shy smile. "Begging your pardon, miss," he said. "I am Jake. I work for Mr. Holbrook, just bringing up your trunk." "Thank you," Nora said, watching as he set the heavy trunk down with ease. Jake hesitated, then said, "Mr. Holbrook is a good man, miss. Best boss I have ever had. Treats everyone fair, never asks more than he is willing to give himself. You will be happy here, I think." Before Nora could respond, he tipped his hat and left, leaving her alone with his unexpected endorsement. She opened her trunk, pulling out a fresh dress, one of the 3 she owned. As she changed out of her travel-stained clothes, she tried to reconcile the man she had met with the harsh reality she had expected. The water in the pitcher was cool and clean. She washed her face and hands, removing the dust of travel, then braided her dark hair into a simple plait. Her reflection in the small mirror showed a woman of 23, with gray eyes that had seen too much disappointment and a mouth that had forgotten how to smile freely. She looked tired and wary, like a deer ready to bolt at the first sign of danger. When she made her way downstairs, following the scent of cooking food, she found Samuel in the kitchen. He had changed his shirt and combed his hair, small gestures of respect that touched her more than she wanted to admit. He was stirring something in a large pot on the stove, and the smell made her stomach growl despite her nervousness. "I hope you like stew," Samuel said, glancing up with a smile. "It is my specialty, though I admit my repertoire is limited." "It smells wonderful," Nora said honestly. "May I help?" "You are my guest," Samuel protested. "Please sit." "I would rather help," Nora insisted. "I am not accustomed to being idle." Samuel studied her for a moment, then nodded. "The bread needs slicing, if you do not mind. The knife is there and the cutting board." They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes. Nora sliced the bread while Samuel set the table, their movements careful to avoid bumping into each other in the modest kitchen. It felt strangely domestic, this quiet cooperation, and Nora found herself relaxing slightly. "Tell me about Philadelphia," Samuel said as they sat down to eat. "What was it like growing up there?" Nora hesitated, unused to being asked about herself. "It was crowded," she finally said. "Loud. Everyone living on top of everyone else, all pretending to be something they are not." "You did not like it." "I suppose I did not have strong feelings about it either way," Nora said, tasting the stew. "It was delicious, rich and savory. It was simply where I lived. My father was a clerk, obsessed with appearing respectable. My mother died when I was young and he never remarried. He spent money we did not have trying to keep up appearances, trying to secure a proper marriage for me with someone of status." "But that did not happen," Samuel said gently. "No," Nora said. "The debts became too great. When he died 6 months ago, I discovered the extent of it. Everything had to be sold to satisfy the creditors. I had nowhere to go, no family willing to take me in. The marriage agency seemed like the only option." "I am sorry," Samuel said, and the genuine sympathy in his voice made Nora's throat tighten. "That must have been terrifying." "I was prepared for this to be another kind of prison," Nora admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. "I expected a harsh man who would use me as he saw fit and discard me when I was no longer useful." Samuel set down his spoon, his expression pained. "I am sorry you felt that way. I am sorry you had reason to feel that way." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "My own childhood was not easy. My father was a hard man, quick with his fists and his judgment. I swore when I left his house that I would never be like him, never make anyone fear me the way we feared him." Nora asked. "I had a younger sister," Samuel said, his voice going quiet. "Emma. She died of fever when she was 10. I was 15, too young to protect her from my father's harshness, too powerless to get her the medicine she needed. After she died, I left. I worked ranches all over Wyoming and Montana, saving everything I could until I had enough to buy this place 5 years ago." "I am sorry about your sister," Nora said, understanding now the sadness she had glimpsed in his eyes. "She would have liked you," Samuel said with a small smile. "She always wanted a sister, someone to talk to. She hated being alone with just me and our father." They finished their meal in a silence that felt less awkward now, more understanding. Samuel refused to let Nora help with the dishes, insisting she must be exhausted. She was tired, bone-deep tired from weeks of travel and months of grief and worry. But she was also strangely reluctant to leave his presence, this gentle man who contradicted everything she thought she knew. "The minister will come tomorrow at noon," Samuel said as she prepared to go upstairs. "But Nora, if you want to wait, if you need more time, we can postpone. I will not force you into anything you are not ready for." Nora looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the earnestness in his expression, the way he held himself carefully, never moving too close, never imposing. And if I wanted to leave entirely, if I decided this was not what I wanted, Samuel's face went still, but he said, then I would give you money for passage back east and a letter of recommendation to help you find respectable employment. You are not a prisoner here, Nora. You never will be. The simple honesty of it broke something inside her, some last defense she had been holding. I do not want to leave, she heard herself say. I am just not accustomed to kindness. I do not trust it. Then I will have to earn your trust, Samuel said, however long it takes. That night, lying in Samuel's bed, wrapped in his handmade quilt, Nora stared at the ceiling and tried to understand what was happening. She had expected cruelty and found gentleness. She had expected to be used and instead found respect. It was disorienting, like the ground beneath her feet had shifted and she was struggling to find her balance. Sleep came eventually, and with it dreams of a future she had never allowed herself to imagine. The morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through the window to wake her. Nora rose and dressed carefully in her best dress, a simple blue cotton that had been her mother's. It was old-fashioned now, but it was the nicest thing she owned. She braided her hair and pinned it up, studying her reflection. She looked pale and nervous, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed down her skirt. When she came downstairs, she found Samuel already up, dressed in clean trousers and a white shirt. He had shaved and looked younger somehow, less weathered. He turned when he heard her footsteps and his expression softened. "You look beautiful," he said simply. Nora felt herself flush. "Thank you. You look very handsome." They shared breakfast together, both too nervous to eat much. Samuel told her about the ranch, about the cattle they raised and the horses he trained. He spoke of his plans to expand, to build a better barn, to maybe plant some crops if he could get the irrigation right. He talked about the community in Wheatland, the neighbors who helped each other during hard times, the dances they held in the town hall every month. "I know I am not a sophisticated man," Samuel said, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "I cannot offer you theater or fine restaurants or the things you knew in Philadelphia, but I can offer you a home, security, and respect. I can promise you that I will work hard to make you happy, if you will let me." "That is more than I ever hoped for," Nora said truthfully. "More than I thought possible." The minister arrived precisely at noon, a kindly older man named Reverend Matthews who had known Samuel for years. He brought his wife, a plump woman with a warm smile who would serve as a witness, along with Jake and the two other ranch hands. The ceremony was simple and brief, held in the main room of the ranch house. Nora spoke her vows in a voice that shook only slightly, and Samuel's voice was steady and sure when he promised to love and cherish her. When the minister pronounced them married, Samuel kissed her gently on the cheek, a brief touch that somehow conveyed more tenderness than she had ever known. Reverend Matthews's wife, Martha, had brought a cake, and there was coffee and conversation. The ranch hands were respectful and friendly, congratulating Samuel with genuine affection. It was clear they thought highly of their employer, and Nora felt some of her remaining anxiety ease. Good men did not inspire such loyalty. After everyone had left, Nora and Samuel stood together in the sudden quiet of the house, now husband and wife, two strangers bound together by law and circumstance. "I know this is overwhelming," Samuel said. "We can take this slowly, Nora. There is no rush." "I am your wife now," Nora said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I understand what that means." "Do you?" Samuel asked gently. "Because I am not sure I have made myself clear. I want a true marriage, Nora, not just an arrangement. I want us to know each other, to trust each other. I want you to want to be here, not just endure it." "I do not know how to do that," Nora admitted. "I have never been wanted before, not really. I do not know how to be a wife to a man who is kind." Samuel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was calloused from hard work, but his touch was gentle. "Then we will learn together," he said. "I have never been a husband before. I am sure I will make mistakes, but I promise I will always try to be patient, to be understanding." That first week of marriage passed in a strange sort of dance, both of them learning each other's rhythms and boundaries. Samuel showed Nora around the ranch, introducing her to the horses and explaining how he managed the cattle. He taught her to ride, patient with her fear and inexperience, his hands steady when he helped her mount. "You are doing wonderfully," he said as she managed to guide the gentle mare around the corral without assistance. His pride in her small accomplishment made her feel capable in a way she never had before. Nora took over the cooking and the housekeeping, glad to have tasks to occupy her hands and mind. She was a decent cook, and Samuel praised every meal lavishly, even when she burned the biscuits or over-salted the stew. He helped with the dishes every night, talking to her about the day's work, asking her opinion on matters concerning the ranch. At night they shared the large bed, but Samuel kept a respectful distance, never pushing, never demanding. He would kiss her good night, sweet kisses that gradually grew less tentative, and hold her hand until she fell asleep. Nora found herself lying awake sometimes, watching him sleep, studying the peaceful expression on his face, trying to understand this man she had married. One evening, about 10 days after their wedding, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. The sky was ablaze with color, purple and orange and deep rose. Samuel sat in one chair, Nora in another, a small space between them that felt significant. "Tell me about your dreams," Samuel said. "What did you want to be when you were young?" No one had ever asked Nora that question before. She thought about it, reaching back to childhood memories she had buried long ago. "I wanted to teach," she said finally. "I loved to read, loved learning. I thought it would be wonderful to help children learn to love books the way I did." "Why did you not pursue it?" Samuel asked. "My father said it was beneath us," Nora said. "He had ambitions for me to marry well to raise our family status. Teaching was common work," he said, "not appropriate for a young lady." "But you would have been happy doing it," Samuel observed. "I think so," Nora said. "Or at least, I would have been useful. I would have had purpose." Samuel was quiet for a moment, then said, "Wheatland is growing. More families moving in, more children who need education. Right now, the closest school is 20 miles away. I have heard talk of building one here in town, but they need a teacher." Nora turned to stare at him. "Are you suggesting that I teach?" "Why not?" Samuel said. "If it is what you want to do, why should you not do it? You are intelligent and well-educated. You would be an excellent teacher." "But I am married," Nora protested. "I have duties here, to you and the house." "The house will not fall apart if you are working a few hours a day," Samuel said with a smile. "And I would be proud to have a wife who contributes to the community." "Nora, I do not want you to give up your dreams just because you married me. I want you to be happy, to feel fulfilled." The idea took root in her mind, growing and blossoming. She could teach. She could make a difference. And Samuel not only approved but encouraged it. The generosity of it, the understanding, made her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick. "Thank you for understanding." "Come here," Samuel said softly, extending his hand. Nora rose and went to him, letting him pull her down onto his lap. She tensed initially, old fears rising, but Samuel just wrapped his arms around her, holding her gently against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. "I want you to be happy," he murmured against her hair. "That is all I have ever wanted. For you to feel safe here, to feel valued and respected. You are so much more than I ever hoped for, Nora. so much stronger and braver than you give yourself credit for. Something broke loose inside her then, some last wall she had been holding. She turned her face into his shoulder and cried, great heaving sobs that she had been holding back for months, maybe years. Samuel held her through it, his hand stroking her back, his voice murmuring gentle reassurances. When the storm passed, Nora felt lighter, cleansed. She pulled back to look at Samuel, seeing concern in his eyes but also tenderness, so much tenderness it made her ache. "I think I am falling in love with you," she whispered, the admission terrifying and liberating at once. Samuel's face transformed, joy lighting his features from within. "I have been in love with you since you stepped off that stagecoach," he said. "From the moment I saw how brave you were, how you held your fear inside and faced the unknown with your head high. You are extraordinary, Nora." He kissed her then, really kissed her, and Nora melted into it, letting herself feel the passion and gentleness he offered. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, she saw her own wonder reflected in his eyes. That night, their marriage became complete in every sense. Samuel was patient and tender, making sure of her comfort, her consent, at every step. What Nora had feared would be an ordeal became instead a revelation of intimacy and trust, of shared vulnerability and profound connection. Afterward, lying in his arms, she felt truly safe for the first time in her life. The weeks turned into months and Nora's life transformed in ways she had never imagined. True to Samuel's encouragement, she approached the town council about starting a school. They were enthusiastic, offering the use of the town hall 3 days a week until a proper schoolhouse could be built. Nora threw herself into preparation, creating lessons and gathering materials. Samuel helped her every step of the way, building desks and a bookshelf, acquiring primers and slates from Denver. He was proud of her work, telling everyone in town about his brilliant wife, the school teacher. His support never wavered, even when it meant extra work for him managing the household on teaching days. The school opened in late November, with 7 students ranging in age from 6 to 13. Nora loved it, loved the challenge and the reward of watching understanding dawn on young faces. The children adored her, and their parents were grateful, often paying her in fresh eggs or preserves or other goods. At the ranch, Nora found herself settling into the rhythm of life with Samuel. She learned to recognize the signs of weather changes, to understand the patterns of the cattle and horses. She began to see the beauty in the harsh landscape, the way the prairie grass rippled like water in the wind, the vast expanse of sky unmarred by buildings. Samuel taught her to shoot, insisting she should know how to protect herself when he was out working the far pastures. He was patient with her awkwardness, praising her progress, never mocking her mistakes. Gradually, she became proficient, feeling more capable and self-reliant. Their love deepened and grew, built on daily kindnesses and shared dreams. Samuel would bring her wildflowers he found on the range, simple gestures that touched her heart. Nora would have his favorite meals waiting when he came in from long days of work, would rub his sore shoulders and listen to his concerns about the ranch. They talked about everything, lying in bed at night, sharing their hopes and fears. Samuel spoke of his desire to build the ranch into something significant, to create a legacy. Nora shared her dreams of expanding the school, of creating a real library for the town. They planned together, dreamed together, built a future out of shared vision. Winter came hard that year, snow piling deep and temperatures plunging. The cattle had to be driven to sheltered valleys, and Samuel worked long hours ensuring they survived. Nora worried about him, the danger of the work, but she also understood this was his passion, his purpose. One particularly bitter night in January, Samuel came in half frozen, his face raw from the wind. Nora had hot coffee ready and she helped him out of his icy coat, chafing his cold hands between hers. "I was worried," she admitted, helping him into a chair by the fire. "You were gone so long." "Found some strays in a ravine," Samuel said, his voice rough with cold. "Had to get them out before they froze. I am sorry I worried you." "I am your wife," Nora said, kneeling before him to pull off his frozen boots. "Worrying comes with that territory, just as loving you does." Samuel pulled her up onto his lap, kissing her cold nose. "How did I get so lucky?" he murmured. "What did I do to deserve you?" "You were kind when I expected cruelty," Nora said simply. "You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me what love could be." Spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves were born, wobbly, legged, and curious. The prairie bloomed with wildflowers, vast carpets of color stretching to the horizon. Nora's school enrollment grew to 15 students, and the town council approved plans for a proper schoolhouse to be built over the summer. In late April, Nora realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with both joy and fear. She had not thought much about children, had not allowed herself to hope for them. But now, carrying Samuel's child, she felt overwhelmed with love and terror in equal measure. She told Samuel one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I am going to have a baby," she said, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Samuel went very still, then turned to look at her, his eyes shining with tears. "Truly." "Truly," Nora confirmed. "In the autumn, I think, late October or early November." Samuel pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby. Nora, you have made me happier than I ever thought possible." "You are not worried?" Nora asked. "It will change everything. It will make everything better," Samuel said firmly. "We will be a family, a real family." He pulled back to look at her, cupping her face in his hands. "You will be an amazing mother, kind and patient and strong." "I hope so," Nora said. "I want to be. I want to give our child everything I never had." "We will do it together," Samuel promised. "Everything together." The pregnancy progressed well, though Nora suffered from sickness in the early months. Samuel was attentive and worried, bringing her weak tea and dry toast, sitting with her when the nausea was worst. He took over more of the household duties without complaint, insisting she rest whenever possible. Nora continued teaching through June, but the summer break came as a relief as she grew larger and more tired. Samuel was endlessly fascinated by her changing body, his hand on her belly feeling for the baby's movements. When the quickening came, the first flutters of life, he was overcome with wonder. "I can feel it," he breathed, his palm pressed to her stomach. "Our child, alive and growing. It is a miracle, Nora." They spent long evenings planning, choosing names, preparing a nursery in the spare bedroom. Samuel built a beautiful cradle from pine, sanding it smooth and carving delicate designs into the headboard. Nora sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her hands busy with creating a nest for their coming child. The town rallied around them, as communities did. The women brought baby clothes and advice, sharing their own experiences. Nora, who had never had close friendships, found herself welcomed into a circle of women who offered support and companionship. Martha Matthews, the minister's wife, became a particular friend. She was a motherly woman who had raised 6 children of her own, and she gently guided Nora through her fears and questions. "You will be fine," Martha assured her one afternoon as they sat together sewing. "You are strong, and Samuel will be there for you. That man adores you. Anyone can see it. You are blessed to have found such love." "I know," Nora said. "Sometimes I still cannot believe it is real, that he is real." "He is very real," Martha said with a smile, "and very much in love. The way he looks at you like you hung the moon and stars, that is a rare thing, Nora. Treasure it." "I do," Nora said. "Every day I do." Labor came on a cold October night 3 weeks before Nora had expected. The pain started as she and Samuel were finishing supper, a sharp cramping that made her gasp. "Nora," Samuel was at her side instantly, his face pale with worry. "Is it time?" "I think so," Nora said, gripping his hand as another pain rolled through her. "But it is too soon, Samuel. The baby is not due yet." "Babies come when they are ready," Samuel said, trying to sound calm though Nora could hear the fear in his voice. "I will ride for Martha. She has delivered dozens of babies. You will be fine. Both of you will be fine." He settled her into bed, then rode hard for town, returning with Martha in less than an hour. The older woman took charge immediately, her calm competence easing some of Nora's fear. "First babies like to take their time," Martha said, checking Nora's progress. "Could be hours yet. Samuel, boil water and gather clean linens. Keep yourself useful." The labor was long and hard, lasting through the night and into the next day. Samuel stayed by Nora's side when Martha allowed it, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, whispering encouragement. "You are so strong," he told her during a brief respite between pains. "So incredibly strong. I am in awe of you." "I am terrified," Nora admitted, gripping his hand. "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing will go wrong," Samuel said with a conviction he clearly did not entirely feel. "You are going to be fine. Our baby is going to be fine. And soon we will hold our child, Nora. Soon." As the sun was setting on the second day, after what felt like an eternity of struggle, Nora finally felt the overwhelming urge to push. Martha coached her through it, her voice firm and encouraging, and Samuel supported her, his strength lending her courage. The baby came in a rush, a squalling, red-faced miracle that Martha caught expertly. "A boy," she announced, quickly checking him over. "A beautiful, healthy boy." Nora collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted beyond measure as Martha cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft blanket. Then she placed him in Nora's arms, and the world narrowed to this tiny, perfect person. "Hello," Nora whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, little one." Samuel was crying too, his hand gentle as he touched the baby's downy head. "He is perfect," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Absolutely perfect. You did it, Nora. You were amazing." They named him Thomas Samuel Holbrook, after Samuel's maternal grandfather. Tommy was a good baby, healthy and strong despite his early arrival. He had his father's dark hair and his mother's gray eyes, and he owned their hearts completely from his first breath. Those early weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings, of learning how to care for this tiny, demanding person. Samuel was a devoted father, changing diapers and walking the floor with Tommy when he fussed. He sang to his son in a surprisingly pleasant baritone, old songs his mother had sung to him before she died. Nora watched him with their son, this gentle, patient man, and fell even more deeply in love. He was everything she had never dared to hope for in a husband, in a partner, in the father of her children. Winter passed in a cocoon of family life. Nora did not return to teaching that year, focusing instead on Tommy and the household. But she read to him constantly, already nurturing a love of learning in her infant son. Spring brought new challenges and joys. Tommy grew rapidly, becoming more alert and interactive. His first smile, directed at Samuel, made both parents cry with happiness. His first laugh, a gurgling chortle prompted by one of Samuel's funny faces, filled the house with joy. The ranch thrived under Samuel's careful management. He had hired another hand, a steady man named Pete who was good with horses. This freed up more of Samuel's time to spend with his family, hours he treasured. One evening in late May, as they sat on the porch with Tommy sleeping between them in his cradle, Samuel said, "I have been thinking about expanding the house, adding a proper nursery and maybe another bedroom or two." "Planning on more children?" Nora asked with a smile. "If we are blessed with them," Samuel said. "I love being a father, Nora. I love our family. I want to fill this house with children and love and laughter." "I would like that too," Nora said, reaching for his hand. "Though perhaps we could wait until Tommy is walking before we think about another," Samuel laughed. "Fair enough. But soon, I hope. I want Tommy to have siblings, to never be alone the way I was." "He will never be alone," Nora promised. "He has us and he always will." Nora returned to teaching that fall, bringing Tommy with her. The students adored having a baby in the classroom, and the older girls would help watch him during lessons. It worked well, allowing Nora to continue her work while staying close to her son. The new schoolhouse was completed in September, a beautiful building with large windows and a small bell tower. Nora cried when she saw it, overwhelmed by the community's investment in education in the future. Tommy's first birthday was celebrated with a small party at the ranch, neighbors and friends gathering to mark the occasion. He was walking by then, toddling around with determination, getting into everything with fearless curiosity. Samuel followed him everywhere, ready to catch him when he fell, laughing at his antics. "He is just like you," Nora told Samuel that night after everyone had left and Tommy was finally asleep. "Brave and curious and full of life." "He has your intelligence," Samuel countered. "I see it in his eyes, the way he studies everything, trying to figure out how it works." "He has the best of both of us," Nora said, curling into Samuel's embrace. "He is so loved." "As are you," Samuel murmured, kissing her temple. "More than I can ever express." "You have given me everything, Nora. A home, a family, a purpose beyond just surviving. You have made my life worth living." "You did the same for me," Nora said. "When I stepped off that stagecoach, I was so broken, so afraid. I thought my life was over, that I was just moving from one prison to another. But you showed me what it means to be cherished, to be valued. You gave me back myself, Samuel. You gave me hope." They made love that night with the tenderness of deep familiarity and still burning passion, their bodies knowing each other as well as their hearts did. And afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, they talked about the future, about dreams and plans and possibilities. Another child did come, a daughter born in the spring of 1885 when Tommy was 2.5. Clara Nora Holbrook arrived on a beautiful April morning, her birth easier than her brother's had been. She was tiny and perfect, with her mother's delicate features and her father's warm brown eyes. Tommy was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to hold her and help with everything. Samuel and Nora watched their children together, their hearts overflowing with gratitude and love. The ranch continued to prosper. Samuel's careful breeding program produced excellent cattle, and his reputation as a fair dealer spread. He was able to buy adjacent land, expanding their holdings significantly. But he never let success change him, never let ambition override his commitment to his family. Nora's school grew to over 30 students, requiring her to hire an assistant teacher. She loved the work, loved making a difference in young lives, and she loved coming home to Samuel and their children, to the life they had built together. The years passed in a blur of activity and joy. Tommy grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books and learning as much as he loved helping his father on the ranch. Clara was spirited and fearless, climbing trees and riding horses almost before she could walk. They fought like cats and dogs sometimes, but they also protected each other fiercely, a united front against the world. A third child, another boy named Daniel, was born in 1888. And a fourth, A daughter they named Emma after Samuel's lost sister, arrived in 1890. The house was expanded twice to accommodate their growing family, filled with noise and laughter and the beautiful chaos of children. Through it all, Samuel and Nora's love remained the foundation of everything. They made time for each other despite the demands of children and ranch and school. They still sat on the porch in the evenings when they could, talking and dreaming and planning. They still held hands in the night, still found moments for tenderness and passion amidst the busyness of their lives. In the summer of 1892, a decade after Nora had first arrived in Wheatland, the town threw a celebration for their 10th wedding anniversary. It was a testament to how beloved they had become in the community, how respected. Samuel for his integrity and fairness in business, Nora for her dedication to education and her gentle kindness. At the party, held in the town hall, Reverend Matthews gave a speech about the power of love and commitment. When Samuel told me he was sending for a mail-order bride, he said, I had my doubts. But from the moment I met Nora, I knew this was something special. These two have built more than a successful ranch or a good school. They have built a family, a home filled with love and respect. They have shown us all what marriage can be at its best. Nora stood beside Samuel, his arm around her waist, surrounded by their 4 children and surrounded by friends. She thought back to that terrified young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach, expecting cruelty, armored against pain. She would barely recognize herself now. Are you happy? Samuel whispered in her ear, pulling her close. Deliriously, Nora whispered back. More than I ever dreamed possible. Good, Samuel said, kissing her cheek, because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way. The children grew and changed, bringing new joys and challenges. Tommy, at 12, was already talking about studying agriculture in college, about bringing new techniques back to the ranch. Clara, at 7, announced she wanted to be a teacher like her mother, or maybe a doctor. Daniel was sweet-natured and musical, always singing or humming. And little Emma, at 2, was the baby of the family, spoiled and adored by all. Nora continued teaching until 1895, when she decided to step back and focus on writing educational textbooks. She had always been frustrated by the lack of quality materials, and with Samuel's encouragement, she began creating her own. Her books were eventually published by a company in Denver and adopted by schools throughout Wyoming and neighboring states. Samuel took on a partner in 1896, a young man named Michael who had worked for him for years and showed real aptitude for ranching. This allowed Samuel to step back from some of the day-to-day operations, to spend more time with his family. They took trips together, the whole family, traveling to Denver and once, memorably, all the way to San Francisco. The children's eyes were wide with wonder at the ocean, at the big cities so different from Wheatland. But they were always happy to come home, to the wide open spaces and the life they knew. In 1898, Tommy left for college at the agricultural program in Fort Collins. It was hard to watch him go, their firstborn, nearly a man now at 16. But he came home for holidays and summers, full of new ideas and eager to share what he was learning. Clara followed her own path, attending the state normal school to become a teacher. Daniel showed such musical talent that arrangements were made for him to study in Denver with a real maestro. And Emma, growing into a lovely young woman, talked of becoming a writer like her mother. Through all of this, Samuel and Nora remained each other's anchor and compass. They had aged together, gray threading through their hair, lines deepening on their faces. But they were still the same people who had fallen in love in this very house, still tender with each other, still passionate. On their 20th anniversary in 1902, They renewed their vows in a quiet ceremony with just their children and closest friends present. Nora looked into Samuel's eyes, still warm and kind after all these years, and spoke from her heart. 20 years ago, I arrived here expecting cruelty, she said, her voice steady. You greeted me with gentleness I had never known. You showed me what love could be, what marriage should be. You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams. You are still the best man I know, the love of my life, my partner in all things. I would choose you again every single day. Samuel's voice was thick with emotion when he spoke his own vows. You are my heart, Nora, my home. You took a lonely rancher and made him the richest man in Wyoming, not in money but in love. You gave me children, purpose, joy. You challenged me to be better, to do more, to never settle. I love you more today than I did 20 years ago, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. As Reverend Matthews pronounced them still married, still bound together, Samuel kissed Nora with all the tenderness and passion of their first kiss and all the kisses since. Their children cheered and friends laughed with joy, and Nora felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The years continued their steady march. The children married and had children of their own, giving Samuel and Nora grandchildren to spoil and delight in. The ranch passed to Tommy and his family, with Samuel acting as advisor and occasional helper. Nora's books were in schools across the West, her legacy ensured. But more than professional success or financial security, what they had built was a family rooted in love and respect. Their children and grandchildren saw daily what a good marriage looked like, what partnership and commitment meant. They learned that strength could be gentle, that kindness was not weakness, that love was both a choice and a gift. In 1910, on a warm summer evening, Samuel and Nora sat on the porch of the ranch house they had shared for nearly 30 years. They were in their 60s now, their children grown, their grandchildren playing in the yard before them. The sunset painted the sky in familiar glory, the land they loved spread out in all directions. You ever regret it? Samuel asked, taking Nora's hand in his. Leaving Philadelphia, coming here, marrying a stranger. Nora looked at him, this man who had been her husband, her lover, her best friend for almost 3 decades. She thought of the frightened young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach, of all the fears and expectations she had carried. She thought of everything that had come after, the love and children and life they had built together. Not for a single moment, she said truthfully. Every good thing in my life came from that choice from you. You gave me everything I never knew I needed. You gave me the same, Samuel said, raising her hand to kiss it. I love you, Nora. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Nora said. My gentle cowboy, my unexpected blessing, my heart. They sat together as the sun set, hand in hand, surrounded by the family they had created and the love that had sustained them through everything. The life that had begun with fear and uncertainty had blossomed into something beautiful beyond measure. The ranch remained in the family for generations, a testament to Samuel's hard work and vision. Nora's books continued to educate children long after she was gone. But their true legacy was in the love they had shared, the example they had set, the family they had raised to value kindness and respect and commitment. Years later, when great-grandchildren asked about their story, about how Samuel and Nora had met, the tale was told with reverence and joy. She arrived expecting cruelty, they would say. But the cowboy greeted her with gentleness she had never known, and from that gentleness a great love grew. And it was true, every word of it. From fear and uncertainty, from a mail-order marriage and desperate circumstances, had come something rare and precious. A love that was tested by hardship and time and emerged stronger. a partnership built on respect and tenderness, a family rooted in the values that mattered most. The ranch house still stood decades later, expanded and updated but fundamentally the same. The land still stretched endlessly, harsh and beautiful. And the story of Samuel and Nora Holbrook was still told, a reminder that love could be found in unexpected places, that gentleness was a strength, that kindness could change everything. They had built something that lasted, something that mattered. Not just a successful ranch or a good school, but a legacy of love that touched everyone who knew them. They showed that it was possible to overcome fear and pain, to build something beautiful from broken pieces, to choose hope over despair. Their graves stood side by side in the cemetery overlooking Wheatland, under the vast Wyoming sky they had both loved. The inscription was simple: Samuel and Nora Holbrook, beloved partners, devoted parents, together always. But the real monument to their love was not made of stone. It was in the descendants who carried their values forward, in the family that still gathered at the ranch for holidays and celebrations, in the gentleness and respect that had been passed down through generations. It was in the memory of a love that had begun with a terrified woman and a gentle man, and had grown into something extraordinary. In the end, Nora had found what she never knew she was looking for, not just safety or security, though Samuel had given her both. Not just respect or kindness, though those were foundations of their marriage. She had found home. She had found partnership. She had found a love that was both passionate and peaceful, challenging and comforting, enduring and ever new. And Samuel had found the same. In Nora, he had discovered not just a wife but a true partner, someone who shared his dreams and supported his vision while pursuing her own. He had found someone who understood him, who appreciated his gentleness rather than seeing it as weakness. He had found love in its truest, deepest form. Their story became legend in Wheatland, told and retold with affection and admiration. The shy, frightened mail-order bride who had become a beloved teacher and author. The gentle cowboy who had built an empire through integrity and hard work. The love that had blossomed between them, unexpected and precious. But more than legend, their story was truth. It was the reality of two people who had chosen each other, day after day, year after year, who had built a life of meaning and purpose together, who had shown everyone around them what marriage could be at its best, a partnership of equals, a joining of hearts and minds and souls. The sun set over the Wyoming prairie, as it had for countless evenings before and would for countless evenings to come. The land endured, vast and unforgiving and beautiful. And the legacy of Samuel and Nora Holbrook endured with it, a testament to the power of gentleness, the strength of love, and the possibility of finding hope in the most unexpected places. Their love story had no dramatic twists or tragic turns. It was not a tale of grand gestures or sweeping romance in the conventional sense. Instead, it was the story of daily choices, of consistent kindness, of love built through patience and nurtured through commitment. It was real and honest and true, and perhaps that was what made it so powerful. She had arrived expecting cruelty, armored against pain, prepared for the worst. He had greeted her with gentleness, with respect, with a kindness that asked for nothing but offered everything. And from that beginning, improbable and uncertain, they had built a love that lasted, a family that thrived, a legacy that endured. It was, in the end, a simple story. A mail-order bride and a lonely rancher, two broken people who found healing in each other. But simple did not mean insignificant. Their love had rippled outward, touching their children, their community, generations yet to come. It had shown that love could be gentle and still be strong, that kindness was not weakness but the greatest strength of all. And so the story ended where it had begun, in Wheatland, Wyoming, on a ranch built with hard work and sustained by love. The cowboy and his bride, partners for life, together until the end and beyond. A love story for the ages, quiet and profound, a reminder that the greatest adventures sometimes begin with a simple act of kindness, a gentle word, an open heart.